Hello and welcome to this week's SIW. I do not remember the number. I should probably know what episode it is beforehand, but yes, welcome back. And this time we are covering Asian horror movies. It is almost as a makeup for losing the monthly horror movie thing. Originally, this was supposed to be Southeast Asian horror movies, just because I don't have too much experience with them compared to other countries, so I was kind of interested. But I was having trouble with finding a fourth movie because the plan was to have a movie from each country that was prominent in making horror movies, which from my research, which isn't a lot, was basically Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesian, and I think Philippines was the fourth. But for Philippines, I was having a bit of trouble both finding movies and finding subs for the movies, so I kind of just cut that and gave up. And other Southeast Asian countries might have had more, but it didn't look like there's too many, so I think Malaysian and Indonesian and Thailand all three are like probably the main people who make it. Especially Indonesia and Thailand, I think, are probably more than Malaysia, but yeah, no. So I just settled with a Korean movie, just because it's been a while since I've watched a Korean movie in general, so I thought it would be nice. So just before, just in general, what I think of each country or their horror scene. This was my first Malaysian horror movie, maybe my first Malaysian movie I've ever seen, or at least from what I've remembered, maybe I have seen an obscure one. Indonesia, I think this was also my first Indonesian horror movie. The only horror I remember from Indonesia is like half of Dread Out, which I played a bit ago, so yeah. So that was neat. South Korea, I've always been a fan of their horror scene in general. They have some really good ones that rank pretty highly on my list, like Tale of Two Sisters and The Wailing in particular are probably my two favorite Korean horror movies. But other prominent ones that you probably heard of or you like, I like them too, just not as much, are The Host and what was it? Train to Busan. I know those two get a lot of love too. And Thailand. Thailand was probably my most not anticipated, but I had the highest bar out of the Southeast Asian countries because I have, well, if you've watched Masao horror playthrough, which is a playthrough on the channel, I did talk about a movie called Coming Soon that I watched, which was pretty good, and that was a good Thai one. That was a classic, so that was a good example. But more importantly to me, they created a movie called Shudder. You might have heard of it because it did have an American remake, which was also decent. But I really, really liked Shudder, like a lot. Like it would probably make my like top 20 Asian horror movies, maybe. So I was excited because I think those are like the two main ones I've seen. Maybe I've seen other Thai ones, but I don't remember it off the top of my head. So but everything I've seen from Thailand was pretty good. So yeah, let's get into it, starting with Malaysia. So the first movie I saw from Malaysia, it was 2015's The Noise. Now this first movie, I didn't really do any quality check on it since I didn't really have the idea. I was just did it on a whim. So it turns out this movie was pretty bad. So I'm sure this isn't an accurate representation of Malaysian horror movies, because this movie was definitely the worst of the night and just unenjoyable. But it's called The Noise. It's directed and starring Adrian Tay, being his only horror horror credits, and he's done 2 movies which look not great. Um, yeah, it was a weird experience. First, like when I first started, it felt like a generic, boring, haunted movie. Then for some reason, something clicked in my brain, and it's like, there might be some cool plot twist in this, because I was getting sort of that kind of vibe. So I thought of all these plot twists, and when it did happen, I will admit I did not expect that twist. While it not being like the totally unique, it still surprised me. So props to that. But once the twist happened, it felt like the movie just, which was about like halfway, maybe 2/3 of the movie was just even more flat and boring than it was before. So it was like a traditional boring horror movie at the beginning, then it turned into like this super cheesy, melodramatic Asian movie. And I mean all Asian movies are like that, but Southeast in general. Not that I have too much experience, but I am part. If you didn't know, I don't know if I mentioned it, I am part Filipino, so even though I haven't watched a Filipino horror movie, I have, back when I was younger, seen some Filipino movies, and those bring melodrama to another level. So it was just a weird pitch from like a somewhat kind of scary movie into something really weird and corny at the end, and it just didn't work well with me. Um, so the plot itself, like I said, it's nothing special, but it's kind of unique. It definitely feels like it probably has some traditional, what is it called again? Superstitions from Malaysia, which is nice. I did appreciate, like, while I thought the last half was kind of boring and lost all its scary factors, I did think it was kind of interesting, um, on how they handled it, because it did seem like some sort of traditional way. But I'm not explaining it well, huh? I usually don't explain the movies just because I want to give it pretty vague, and just because if it is good, I don't really want to spoil anything. But I would never recommend this anyways. Um, Actually, yeah. But for the scares, I think the first half, again, just your typical jump scares. Some were sort of effective, some were really flat. There's one scare that really got me, which was a suspense scare, which I found out, well, I probably knew, but from one of the other movies that overused a lot of suspense scares, that's probably the most effective jump for me. But what I mean by suspense is where you know it's coming, but they just keep building it up and then releasing it at like the perfect moment. So they did that really well in this movie. For one scare, I was like, that was a good one. Gotta give them credit for that. The acting felt pretty flat. I mean, the main guy, which was also the director, I didn't hate. I hated his love interest though. She was very, very boring. But if I had to choose the highlight of the movie, it would have to be the ghosts. Specifically, the main antagonist of the story was a little boy ghost. He really gave me Toshio vibes. If you don't know Toshio, he's the little boy from Ju-on or The Grudge. Though I don't know if his name is Toshio in the American remake. He had similar makeup, though, I mean different, probably not as simple, but he very much reminded me of him, where a lot of his stuff at the beginning anyways was just like some weird trolling stuff, where it was a weird mix of him. I thought he was like pretty cute and funny at the beginning, but like there's some shots where it just like stares at him, and when you look at him closely, he does look pretty creepy with his like just a full natural smile. I was like, oh, that's pretty creepy, so I applaud them for that. I don't know if they did have inspiration from Toshio, because there was a scene where they used a cat, sort of a cat jump scare, and Toshio is very much related to cats, so maybe it was a Toshio reference. I don't know if people care enough, or maybe it could just be a Malaysian superstition. I'm not too knowledgeable about that, but if it is Toshio, I mean, good for them. Anything related to Ju-on is always a positive in my book. So yeah, I think another highlight, though not for good reasons, was the special effects. Which, you know, it's fair. I'm not expecting anything good really from the special effects, because in Southeast Asia, the countries aren't really that rich, so most of the movies, except for the Korean one, I guess, were pretty low budget. I have kept the IMDb page. Does it say their budget? It actually doesn't even list the budget, but the special effects were so horrible. Like, some parts were even laughable. Like, I remember, like, just the ghost kid just teleporting around looked so funny. All I could think of that was the, like, Sonic meme with him, like, teleporting behind. It looked so derpy. Probably the worst was in the latter half, and things got kind of weird and boring. Weird but boring. There's a lot of, like, energy waves and people, like, using energy palms or whatever, and that also looked terrible. Which, again, you can't, if you're gonna use the special effects, I don't expect much, but in my opinion, you know, I'm just some random Canadian young adult, but I think if you do have a low budget, there's probably just shouldn't use CGI special effects, because I think for a lot of the scares or the scenes with the boy ghost, he was pretty much fine without special effects. Like, all the special effects did was not make him scary, but he had, like, some decent scares when they didn't pimp him out with special effects. And all the force pushing. It was a mess of a movie. So again, sorry Malaysia, I really should have quality controlled. So one day I will try a Malaysian horror movie again, and I'll look for something half decent. I mean, on IMDb right now, it has a 5.7 out of 10, which is way too high. That is only out of 68 people. I think it got bashed on Letterboxd, which is the main one I use. Anyways, I'm gonna give this one a 2 out of 10. The 2 just because, again, good suspense there, which really doesn't give the point, but I did like the makeup and how it might be a Toshio reference. That's probably, and I did laugh. So it's not it's kind of boring, but at least there's some entertaining parts, you know, compared to, like, I always compare to the same movies for, like, 1 stars, but they're, like, the most obvious choice for me. Like, compared to The Nun, which was just boring with zero entertainment at all, there's at least some entertaining movies, so I will spare it and give it a 2. But that being said, at a 2, I would never recommend you to watch this. Unless you've watched all the good Malaysian horror movies and you just need to watch more, then I guess you can try this one out. But in my opinion, I really don't think you should. Next we have, I believe, might be my first Indonesian horror movie, called Satan's Slaves. I feel like someone did mention this. It's from 2017. I feel like someone did mention this when it came out to me. Probably my dad, since he's, like, the only person I taught to movies. But someone recommended it to me, and I was just too lazy or didn't want to watch it. And what a mistake. I think this movie was really great. And it was a really strong showing. I wish I picked a good one for Malaysia too. The story itself is a pretty conventional cult story, and I mean, the twist was good, but it wasn't anything groundbreaking. They've had that sort of, maybe not the exact twist, but a similar sort of twist for a lot of things. But that being said, first of all, I love cult movies. I never get tired of them. There definitely have been some bad ones, but in general, there's some sort of plot lines that you really enjoy, and cult movies have always tickled my fancy, so that might have boosted my enjoyment. And it's just a really well polished film. Um, like the characters were fine. I didn't love all of them, but they had some really good chemistry, which might not. I mean, nah, I shouldn't say that. That might spoil it. But and I kind of cared about them because they seemed like a pretty good family. So making you care about people in a movie is always a good idea. And more or less, I usually don't care about people, so good for them. But the highlight of this is obviously the scares. This movie was pretty scary. A lot of the scares were effective, especially for me because they overuse suspense jump scares, which might be a problem and people might not like it that much. But apparently it's not a problem for me because, like, I want to say like at least 70% of them got me. Some didn't. Like one I was like, oh, that's pretty boring, and like a couple minutes later they hit you with another one, and I was like, oh my god, let me turtle up, this is pretty spooky. So I mean, that's the core of a film. If you're of a horror film, if you're not gonna have like some, and I don't want to diss the plot again, it was conventional, though it didn't do anything new, but which I'm guessing is why people don't like it as much. I mean, it's 6.6 on IMDb, which isn't bad. I think it got much higher on Letterboxd, like close to 8 out of 10. But I'm telling you, the stairs, it was good, and it really lasted throughout most of the movie. At the end, I think it fizzled out a little bit for me. No, that's not true. The ending was good. There's a good mix of cult spooky stuff, ghost spooky stuff, and zombies. I thought the zombies looked pretty good. And there's definitely a bit of flair to the movie. A lot of well done shots and artistic choices. And wait, does it have the budget here? It might, since this seems a little more popular. Well, it grossed 431,000, which isn't a lot, but it's probably a lot for a movie from that country. Apparently, it's a remake. Who would have known? I'd have to check that one out. But yeah, this is a scary movie. Again, I guess I kind of gave it away, but just saying it's a cult movie, and if you're a horror fan like me, you can probably guess in general what it is about. But it was good enough, and the twist, again, not super original, kind of got me because I was like hard stuck focused on this one character who I was like, oh, this character is definitely evil. I'm waiting for the end. I know it's gonna happen, and then it just turns out the character was good the whole time, and then I was like, oh. Which is good. I guess deceiving is a good thing. But yeah, I'm just saying this movie has the good, even atmospherically it was decent. So basically, yeah, it had a lot of scares. Maybe if you don't like suspense scares like me, it doesn't tickle you, give you that tingly feeling as much, then maybe you won't like it. But I think in general this was a pretty great showing from Indonesia. I'm already confusing them. Please don't hurt me. And I think I gave this one a 7 out of 10. I probably should have. Why am I on IMDb? I should have just been on Letterboxd. It doesn't really matter, but it's easier to see what I rated it. I would probably give it a 7, which is a good rating. I feel like I was talking to someone and they're like, 7 isn't good. But 5 is average, 6 is good, 7 means great. And this was a great movie. Again, I'm more of a plot focused guy, so I like a little bit more creativity, but a well polished with really solid scares is always fun to watch. And I'm sure for in general, people will really like this sort of thing. So yeah, 7 out of 10. Would recommend watching this. It will spook you. I hope it will spook you. If it doesn't spook you, then I will owe you one, okay? Next, I watched the South Korean substitute for Philippines, so it better be good. It was called The Silence. It was also from 2015, which was the same as The Noise. Sorry, I don't. I'm checking it as I see it. By a pretty new director, it seems. I didn't like this movie. I don't think it was bad, but it just didn't really vibe with me, and I think the writing was pretty bad. It's basically a historic school horror thing where it takes place in like an old girls' school for the sick people, and they're trying to recover there. Taking place in the time where Japan was occupying Korea for a bit. I don't exactly know the history, but I don't think I've seen a movie with that setting, or at least in horror, which is cool. And I also did enjoy the setting of a bunch of sick students in a school. I feel like I have heard of that setting before, but it's pretty unique. But that being said, because of that setting, I think it's pretty easy to see where the movie was going. Like, I kind of predicted it. Well, I think you get a general idea at the beginning, but as it goes on, it's pretty easy to find out what was happening, which I think hindered it a bit. But it was weird. It kind of felt like it was trying to be a bit artsy for the most part, like an artsy horror with creative and unique shots. But again, it fell flat because, one, I didn't really care about the characters too much. They were kind of boring. Boring for sick characters. Like, there's three characters that I remember their names out of a big cast. Which again, they didn't focus on a lot of them, but I think giving them, even if you're not gonna give a lot of focus, like just a couple minutes each might have made the movie more exciting and make me care about people more. Because there's some people who I didn't perceive as important, but I think they were supposed to be with their deaths. So yeah, just boring. I don't want to be mean, though this wasn't received too well, but it was like a halvesies, and I at least, if something's over 5 stars generally, I will at least give a try, because I have disagreed before with scores. Like, if you watched my last one, I gave Mon Monsters an 8, which is probably overrating it a little bit, but it just sits in most places. So I usually give stuff a chance. This is like a 5.8, but it didn't mesh with me, especially the ending. Like, it went from a sort of spooky, like the horror was a bit effective but not really, into it went into very weird territory, kind of like The Noise, but yeah, it really much like The Noise. Like, they both took these weird turns where it felt like almost a completely different movie, where The Noise was like super cheesy and felt very, very South Asian. This one felt like it went from, what's a good example? I'm trying to think. It went from like Insidious to the Terminator. It went from like a spooky, maybe ghostly demon stuff to like the Terminator. Maybe that's a little over exaggeration, but that's what it felt like to me. It was too clunky. Like, you can feel like they had a vision. They had a lot of artistic stuff they wanted to do. Like, they had a lot of ideas for the movie, but they just couldn't write it / direct it and put it into a coherent format where it felt good. And you really feel this clash of ideas where it's just unorganized and it's sort of a mess. And it's a shame, because again, I kind of liked where it was going a bit. At the beginning, again, it was predictable, but kind of liked it. And then I was just done with it in the last like third of the movie. As for how scary it was, it was, before it went weird, it was decently scary. There's some pretty good scene. I think the scariest part was, without spoiling, a scene where there was somebody under the bed. That was pretty freaky. Oh, and there was one under the staircase. Those two were those were very good scenes for me, very effective. But the rest is it just feels like they dropped the ball. The acting was fine, and I guess the main characters, the main two friends, their chemistry wasn't bad. I kind of did like them, but not as much, not too much. just not good, not polished enough. Needed a lot of work. Again, I'm not like an expert at these things, but I feel like it was almost rushed a bit. And it had an hour and 40-minute time. I feel like even though it did feel long and it was dragging, maybe if they even gave it a bit more and went to the 2-hour mark, spread it out a bit, maybe they could have transitioned their ideas and fleshed it out a bit more. And maybe or they could have just made a better movie. Yeah, in general, I'm gonna give this one a 4 out of 10. I give 4 out of 10s to movies that I don't like, but maybe I can see someone else liking. But to be fair, I actually don't think this is a good movie, so maybe I think I will move it to a 3 out of 10. I gave it 4 out of 10 in general, but it doesn't really fit the criteria of that, so I'm gonna have to downvote it. So sorry. I think it was better than The Noise just because the scarier parts, the scarier highs of this movie was better than the scarier highs of the other, and it had more scary parts in general. And the idea was, I guess both were actually, in terms of uniqueness, were not that far apart, but this one did have a bigger budget, so it looked better. And that's just gonna give it the edge, but this isn't a good movie. I wouldn't recommend this to anyone unless then you were very bored. Also, the subs weren't great, and because I think previously I said that with bad subs in Japanese movies, it's not too bad, since I know basic phrases and can usually logic out what they're saying. But it's a bit harder with Korean, since I haven't watched anything Korean in a couple years, honestly. So it's a bit harder. But again, there was actually a lot of Japanese in this movie because of the setting, so it wasn't the worst. But I didn't like this movie. And I don't think it is good enough to even say other people would like it. Like, from what I've seen, at least in Letterboxd, the only like positive reviews were saying that this had some lesbian characters, but even those reviews didn't give it they didn't give it high ratings. So I don't think this is worth it. If someone pointed a gun to your head and said if you'd rather watch this or The Noise, then I don't know. It's actually kind of hard, because I feel like The Noise was at least kind of funny, and maybe you might like The Cheese. But who knows? Let's move on. I didn't like it. Blah, blah. Cut it. And for the final feature in this group was our Thailand movie called CM Square from 2017. Directed... Let's see, is the director anything? No, he's only done four things. So, a lot of pretty, well, actually I didn't check the director for Satan's Slaves, but a lot of, like, not well... Okay, so the director from Satan's Slave has a lot of stuff, but everyone else is pretty new, so new directors, it's a chance to shine with the 10 people who watched this. Um, but CM Square was, I thought it was okay. I feel like at least on Letterboxd, right here on IMDb, it got a 5.5, but a lot of people on Letterboxd gave it like a 1 or a 2. But I kind of liked it. It was a school horror movie, a school ghost horror movie, which kind of sounds specific, but I feel like a lot of those are things that that have similar plot lines. But again, this is something that I kind of like. Like, it has high school students, but they actually feel like the director slash writer actually written them well, so they feel like legitimately good high school students. Like, there's a lot of petty problems and a lot of pretty horrible people with high school students, and it's just the vibe. I liked it though. I enjoy that sort of thing. So it was just kind of fun to follow them, even though again they're not the greatest people. But yeah, this was alright. I think it kind of fell off at the end, though again most movies do. But in general, it was pretty standard, which is fine. Again, I think there's a lot of fun moments with the high school kids. A lot of plot lines and underdeveloped characters though that could have been worked out on. Like, there's a lot. Obviously, I don't want to sweat the whole class, but there's a good group of kids whose names I didn't even remember by the end of it, even though they were kind of important. And this movie is an hour and 53 minutes, so they had a lot of... It did feel like it kind of dragged, especially at the end. But they had a lot of time to at least give a bit more flavor to the characters, which would have helped it a lot. But I thought the first half at least was pretty scary, mainly because the creature in this was probably my favorite creature. The stuff in Satan's Slaves looked kind of like basic zombies, but they were pretty well made. This one was like its unique thing. It was like a giant girl with like long hands and a really messed up face. At the beginning, at least, she had like a very gory face. Like, her skin was all like mush and stuff, like all guts and stuff, and that looked very scary. But at the end, no. That scared me. Freaking YouTube notifications, dude. I'm sorry. They have a jump scare. What was I saying? I lost it. But at the like latter half, there's like close-ups of her face, but it just looked like it wasn't gory anymore. It was just like red eyes and stuff. It looked kind of lame. So I think there is more spooky monster than the less spooky monster, but the monster is good, and there's again a good suspense jump scare. I think all horror movies with that aim to have some jump scares should at least have a good suspense jump scare, because it's really effective for me. I really enjoy them. I'm just like, I know you're gonna pop up somewhere, just go already. Don't make me wait. And the scares in general, I thought were pretty solid. I mean, Satan's Slaves kind of dwarfs it from quality, but I think just alone it is pretty effective. There's some like dimensional shifting. Like, there's a really good one where like two people go in, but one guy gets isolated in a dimension, and that was pretty spooky with the ghost person coming close. But I think the ghost person in this was like the scariest monster out of all the people, because that was so freaky. I mean, I gotta applaud them for that. And like the other, because again, this Thailand has impressed me a lot with the past movies, and they do good jump scares. You will jump from it. I mean, there's not much else from that. Instead of fun school shenanigans, a very scary monster, and in the latter half it kind of fades out. Also, I'll give this the best OS or soundtrack award because during like the more slice of lifey stuff and the kids are just hanging out, there's an absolute bop. If I remember / can find it on YouTube, I will put it in the background. But it was a bop. It was the most memorable song, so got to give it to that. So I'm not sure why this one's as hated as much as like the noise or the silence, because it felt pretty decent. Like I was pretty much interested most of the way, then it kind of got worse, and then it really dragged at the end, and I was almost cheesed because my favorite character, and while I said some of the characters weren't, oh yeah, some of the characters weren't too important, but there was a lot of good chemistry between some of the kids. Like I said, they do really feel like high school students with the way they talk and the topics and stuff. Even though I'm not from Thailand, it feels very relatable. I mean, I'm not a high school student either, but I don't know. It still feels relatable as a young adult. Okay, I'm not an old man if you couldn't tell. But you know, there's these 4 group of friends, boyfriends, friend boys, whatever. 4 group of boys who were hilarious. I really enjoyed seeing them. And my favorite character, I don't want to say because I don't want to spoil anything, it felt like they randomly killed him at the end, and I was so cheesed at that, but it turns out it didn't, which is a spoiler, sorry, but I don't know. I thought they really killed him, but then again, I said before that the ending dragged so long that it didn't happen, so it's like, oh, that's good. Anyways, this was alright. I give it a 5 out of 10, so I think it's a very, very solid, average horror movie with decent jump scares and some fun side stuff with the Stroll people. So this was enjoyable. I mean, anything I give 5 or over, I would recommend. I guess, I mean, I wouldn't recommend this like very highly, but if you don't have anything to do and you're interested in a Thai horror movie, then this is a decent choice. Compared to Coming Soon and Shudder, definitely Shudder, it's not as good. Coming Soon, I don't think the gap is too big, but it's probably not as good. But yeah, that's CM Square. I might be pronouncing it wrong. Decent movie. I enjoyed it. So if you don't, to wrap up, best movie out of the bunch was 2017's Satan's Slaves, which was a remake. It was very fun, lots, again, conventional story, but it was a cult story, which I really enjoy. The zombies were cool, the scares were good. Would recommend. It would be a good horror night if you did. Then it is CM Square, which is a pretty decent school horror movie with fun slice of life stuff. Then the silence and the noise are both pretty trash. So to take away, I mean, I guess I do want to see more Indonesian because this was a pretty good start, but this is a very highly recommended one, so I don't know if there will be anything better. Hopefully there will be though, because I want to see more. And same with Thailand. Thailand has been consistently, even though this wasn't the best movie, it was watchable for me anyways, which might be a hot take, I guess, but yeah. Korean, sorry, you're cut. I mean, Malaysian, I want to give you another chance. And if I do eventually find a Filipino thing that's worth watching and is subbed, then I'll do that later. But yeah, this was a fun mix of movies. It's good to expand my experiences with horror movies, because it's kind of insane to think that I've watched like over like high 200s and most of them were just English and a lot of Japanese movies, so it's good to again expand my knowledge of them, and I'm kind of interested in a lot of them, even though they do seem a lot more campy, but I guess that just comes with the budget. So hopefully you enjoyed this, and again, I think I will be at least for now, be posting these reviews every Sunday. Is a good day, so come back Sunday for another movie or TV show or whatever review. Thanks for watching. Bye.